go in for people being powerful here, right? Don't go in for that sort of thing. Well, you're from the mother country. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the mother country does really. But okay. All right. There's a lot of people that like to be right in front, I see. Yeah. Okay. So you always have to be careful what you affirm, because once you say something quite strongly and the opposite always appears. But in general, I tend to be on time and I tend to start on time. And it's only that we still are going back and forth with, logistics and getting things organized. And, so we're a little bit late and you're a little bit late. But each day we'll get closer to starting exactly on time. Okay, we can do that together. All right, don't you think? I prefer it, and I think actually it's very rude for the train. I won't go there. Okay, good morning, everyone. But while we are, it's a compromise for me, because if I want to start with an ATM, which we will start with an ATM today and many days, and people are not here, I'm a very empathetic sort of person, so I feel distracted by the fact that they're compromised by coming into the middle of an ATM. It's not the same. So it just pulls on me that they've started their day off on a wrong foot, really. You see. So I'm not being punitive. I'm just saying, let's try to be here together, because otherwise I'm going to talk to you about the mother country or, Sydney fireworks or something, because I'm kind of waiting for the stragglers. And, right? So I don't know how many more stragglers we have. You can do a head count. But I'll talk to you about something a little bit more pertinent to your interests, which is, what bone or joint are we having this week? And who are we having it from? You have a bone of the week or a joint of the week, or it's a joint, but probably there's a bone on top of it and a bone below it, right? Okay, usually that, unless you're doing a worm or something. Elbow. Oh, good. Would you stand up? So, I'm getting to know you too. Okay. Hi, Barbara. All right. So why don't you be ready to go on Thursday? Can you be ready to go on Thursday? Okay. Good. After lunch on Thursday. After lunch on Thursday. Okay. Yeah. Elbow.
So we also, for the same, have the wrist next week.
Oh. And what? Yeah, it's amazing how no matter what joint you pick, it always goes with the ATM. So, we should have the wrist and the elbow today. Maybe that would help us. I don't know. Does it help having intellectual ideas? You can have both. Yeah. I was never helped by those intellectual ideas too much, but no, I always preferred the sensory. I always preferred the direct experience personally, but to the explanations. But as you know, did you do Myers-Briggs in here? Did Julie didn't do that with you? Oh, in Perth, she did Myers-Briggs with her groups, just to establish, right from the beginning, that we all have different styles of approaching the world and approaching learning, and we're different. And sometimes when you're talking to one of your colleagues and you think, as I used to think, And they're not getting it, you know. In my old judgmental days, which have long since passed, but but when I was young and I had these colleagues and we used to argue about stuff, so they would come out at one angle and I would just say, they're not really not getting it at all, and then they probably thought I wasn't getting something, and and it's not true. We were all getting quite a lot, but from our own angle of approach, and then of course over time you round it out, so I'm not a totally non-intellectual person, but I mean, I think I even have a higher degree in education from somewhere. If I can remember back that far, I do have a master's degree, so just to say. But you see where the meaning is for you in your own learning. Where's your strength, and honor it, and then over time you fill it in. So has anybody compared themselves to anybody else in the room yet in the training, or?
The thing is, I'm very with you in my approach because I don't have any of that scientific understanding. But without knowing a bit about it, you feel like there's a little bit of a void there, and that's good to know about it. And then if you wish to dismiss it and use your own approach, you can, but without that, there's
if it makes you, of course, if it makes you feel more comfortable when you talk to groups, and just to make fun of Americans a little bit more, I like to, when I travel, make as much fun of Americans as possible. And there's always a good moment, because every time I'm here, there's some god-awful thing that we're up to in America that you just can't believe, and probably you know what the current one is, but anyway, moving right along, sound bites, right? So, I mean, actually, I've read 30 books on the brain, but I don't, because in my early days, I believed that if I could read these books on the brain, I would understand. I would understand the method. We've all been trying to understand the method for 30 years or 40 years. And Susan hasn't been here yet, right? Okay. Well, you're going to be treated to Susan Hillier, and after that, you're going to feel very potent about your ability to be a dilettante in the neurological world of, but just...
and not understand much more.
Understand from what paradigm?
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a whole talk about this right now, but I mean, there's so many different paradigms and ways. And, for instance, I'll just tell you, I had to give a presentation at a conference a few years ago, where there was a researcher talking about mind-body stuff, and I had to give the embodied practice. And the guy in charge told me my assignment was to explain, where awareness is in the brain. And this is a very, very intelligent person. And he said, read Daniel Siegel, because he lays it out. We can talk more about this if there's time. There's also Jenny's things, a lot about mindfulness. So I read Daniel Siegel, and he presented his evidence. And I said, that's really interesting, but that's not the only explanation. And I know it's not. So somebody else is going to, and my researcher didn't agree with his evidence. So, it makes you feel secure to say God is in the limbic system. It's very interesting. It's titillating piece of soundbite. Did you know that God is in the limbic system? Read Ramachandran. He explains it. Ramachandran's a very interesting writer about, and researcher. So you see, I can be a dilettante like that and rattle it off. But the thing is that it's hard to know for sure. And Moshe was really, when I go back and look at the things he said, he knew. He would tell us things. He would say, well, the attention comes from the reticular formation. Every once in a while, he would throw out like some place in the brain. But as he was speaking, they were changing it. It's not hierarchical. It's more many things happening simultaneous. They were changing it. He knew they were changing it. He was talking about neuroplasticity, which they hadn't discovered from the MRIs yet. They couldn't, they were just on the brink. So we can just take the most current things, and I always gave my group, for instance, 2 or 3 books. They had to read it. They had to be able to talk about it. They had to be able to bring a few ideas from that realm into their groups for the exact reason you're talking about. Because obviously, if I'm just, if I'm just going to be, feel it. Oh, the words don't matter, which is also true. No, but I have to be able to pace my audience. I have to be able to pace everybody in the room. And if I have a very intellectual person who doesn't feel themselves, then I have to go in through the mind and convince them until they come, like with my clients. If I have people that don't feel themselves, then I meet them at the level of ideas. And they see all my books, so they know I'm not just a total hippie out to lunch, as I once was when I was young. So, yeah. Okay, so whatever, because it's not worth it to have all of our energy going into some kind of inadequacy, which we can work on in a simple way. Save your energy for your big inadequacies, right? Not this. I'm making a bad joke, but
and that aspect of just looking at the joint, that's also helpful, because people approach you and say, "Oh, I've got a sore knee." Knee, okay. This is the knee, and then we can let that go and do the practice that we sort of intend to do. Because some people just only communicate in injury or
if it's helpful, then anyway, you don't have to get out of the training and say, I know nothing about anatomy. It's being handled for you, so you'll know something, and you'll be and I've seen, you've had some presentations already, so probably you've seen that your colleagues find a way to make it more interesting than the textbooks, for sure. The ones I've seen, the presentations I've seen.
Great. Yeah.
All right, I don't know how we got off onto all that, but pardon? Yeah. Sound bites, intellectual things. But you are lucky to have Susan Hillier, because if you don't have a brain that goes easily into scientific world, she is the most entertaining, compelling, interesting person talking about neuroscience of anybody I've ever met. Now, wow. Am I allowed to praise an Australian that much? I don't know. I'm really putting her up there. But I'm sure you'll find other problems that she has, ways to take her down. You'll figure out how to make it work. But no, she's just great. She's great. She makes it so fun and so interesting. So and you'll have lots of stuff like that, because you're related to this physical therapy tradition way back when. And those women, they knew all that stuff, and they still know all that stuff. Okay, and I don't even think they took as many drugs as we did in the States when we were studying. No, I actually didn't take drugs. And I feel it's important to tell. I'm kind of an oddity. No, I'm kind of an oddity, really, but I am from that generation, all right, of hippies. And Moshe was not planning to pass his work to the American hippies. He wanted to be, it was not what he was up to. But they were the ones that were ready for it, They were like, yeah, we know, everything's possible. He wanted to be, and I think he thought he was going to be really in the medical world in the beginning. And he was married to a doctor. Did you know that? So, but he also told us that he said, she wanted him to go to his wife said, go to medical school. And he said, if I'd gone to medical school, they would have knocked out of me everything that I thought, everything that I believed. So it was a very different way. And of course, science is catching up with him, and the medical world is catching up with him. But it's still amazing that if your knee bothers you, you go to the knee doctor. And if your foot bothers you, you go to the foot doctor. And if your shoulder bothers you, you go to the shoulder doctor. And it's all on the right side because you had an accident, because you fell off out of a tree when you were 8 years old and nobody asks you anything. Is that your life? Uh-huh. Did you? Oh. Did that happen? Were you really talking about that this morning? Yeah, well, that's how I teach. You see, I suck it out of the air. Okay. It's interesting. I don't know why that came to me. But you could spend a long time in the medical world with people who don't relate a shoulder to a hip to a foot, or, look at your history, right? And so we're doing something different. And you've already figured it out, right? Why is it all on the right side? And and the time is long past for you to bring yourself back as much as possible to a time before the injury. And I think that's a place where we can be tremendously effective with people. Is something happens to them, they have a surgery, they have an accident, and they mend and they heal, but nobody brings them back to an equilibrium that they need to be at in order 10 years later not to have a secondary problem in the neck and a secondary thing here. And so the doctors can, there's a place for medicine. We have a doctor here now. Good morning, doctor. How are you? Nice to see you. Anyway, that's Dr. Olga from the Brisbane training. But so doctors can save people's lives. But in terms of understanding a pattern of movement and the relationship between your sprained ankle when you were 7 years old and the pain in your neck on the opposite side, no, right? The pattern. So we're learning to perceive in patterns, in relationships, and being able to see the whole. And first you discover it in yourself. So that's what we're up to. Okay, so let's do some awareness through movement. Please lie on your